I never thought I would be the villain in someone else's story. We always picture ourselves as the hero, don't we? The one who was wronged, the one who deserves sympathy, the one who had no choice. But I'm not here to lie to you. I'm here to tell you the truth, and the truth is this. I betrayed my sister. I betrayed her in the worst possible way, and because of what I did, I lost her forever. Not to death, not to distance, but to something far more permanent. I lost her to the truth of who I really was, and that truth destroyed everything we had built together over 32 years of sisterhood. My name is Rebecca, and this is my confession. Growing up, my sister Charlotte was everything I wanted to be. She was 2 years older than me, which doesn't sound like much, but when you're children, 2 years might as well be a decade. Charlotte was taller, prettier, more confident. She had this way of walking into a room and making everyone notice her without even trying. I used to watch her from across the dinner table, studying the way she spoke to our parents, the way she could make our father laugh when he was in one of his dark moods. She had a gift for people that I never possessed. We grew up in a small town outside of Manchester, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and secrets don't stay secrets for long. Our parents were working-class people who sacrificed everything to give us opportunities they never had. Dad worked at a factory for 35 years, and Mum cleaned houses for wealthy families on the other side of town. They wanted better for us, and they made sure we knew it every single day. Charlotte took that responsibility seriously. She studied hard, got into university, became a teacher. She was the pride of our family, the one who proved that all of Mum and Dad's sacrifices had been worth it. And me? I struggled. I was never as smart as Charlotte, never as focused. I barely scraped through my exams and ended up working at a clothing shop in town while trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. But here's the thing about being the younger sister of someone like Charlotte. People are always comparing you, always measuring you against her achievements. Oh, you're Charlotte's sister. She was such a brilliant student. Your sister just got promoted to head of department, didn't she? You must be so proud. And I was proud. I truly was. But there was another feeling that lived underneath that pride, something darker that I never wanted to acknowledge. Jealousy. Pure, burning jealousy that grew a little stronger with every year that passed. I need you to understand something before I continue. I loved my sister. I loved her more than I can possibly explain. She was my protector, my confidant, my best friend. When I was 16 and went through my first heartbreak, it was Charlotte who held me while I cried. When I was 23 and got fired from my job for something that wasn't my fault, it was Charlotte who helped me find a new one. When I was 27 and our father died suddenly of a heart attack, it was Charlotte who stood beside me at the funeral and made sure I didn't fall apart completely. She was always there for me, always, and I repaid her by destroying her life. It started with a man named Daniel. Isn't that how these stories always start? With a man who walks into your life and changes everything? Daniel was Charlotte's boyfriend. They had been together for 4 years by the time I really noticed him. I mean, I had noticed him before, of course. He was handsome in that classic English way, tall with dark hair and these piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through you. But I had never let myself look at him properly, never allowed myself to see him as anything other than my sister's partner. That changed at Charlotte's 34th birthday party. It was a warm evening in July, and Charlotte had invited about 40 people to celebrate at a rented venue just outside the city. She looked beautiful that night, wearing an emerald green dress that matched her eyes. Daniel was by her side the whole evening, his hand resting on the small of her back in that protective way that couples have. I remember watching them dance together during a slow song, and something shifted inside me. Something I should have recognized and crushed immediately. Instead, I let it grow. Daniel found me outside on the terrace around midnight. I had stepped out for some air, feeling overwhelmed by the noise and the crowd, and the uncomfortable feeling in my chest that I couldn't quite name. He came out with 2 glasses of champagne and offered me one with a smile. "You look like you could use this," he said, leaning against the railing beside me. "Thanks," I replied, taking the glass. "Just needed a moment. You know how I am with crowds." He nodded. "Charlotte's mentioned it. She worries about you, you know. She worries about everyone." "True, but especially you." We stood there in comfortable silence for a few minutes, looking out at the city lights in the distance. And then he said something that should have made me walk away immediately. "Can I tell you something, Rebecca? Something I probably shouldn't say?" I should have said no. I should have made an excuse and gone back inside. But I didn't. "Sure," I said. He turned to look at me, and those blue eyes held something I recognized, something I had felt myself but had never allowed anyone to see. "Sometimes I wonder what it would have been like if I had met you first." My heart stopped. I swear it actually stopped beating for a full second before racing back to life at twice the normal speed. This was the moment, the crossroads. I could have laughed it off, told him he had too much to drink, reminded him that Charlotte was inside waiting for him. That's what a good sister would have done. That's what I should have done. Instead, I looked at him and said, "I've wondered the same thing." That was the beginning of the end. Nothing happened that night. We finished our champagne, went back inside separately, and pretended that conversation had never taken place. But something had been planted, a seed of possibility that I should have recognized for what it really was. The first step on a path that would lead to my sister's complete devastation. Over the following months, Daniel and I began talking more frequently. It started innocently enough. He would text me funny memes he thought I'd appreciate. I would send him articles about topics we'd discussed. Charlotte thought it was wonderful that her boyfriend and her sister were becoming friends. She actually encouraged it. "I'm so glad you two get along," she told me during one of our weekly coffee dates. "It means so much to me, Becca. You're the 2 most important people in my life, and knowing that you like each other makes everything feel complete." I smiled and nodded and felt something dark and ugly twist in my stomach. The affair started 3 months after that conversation on the terrace. I wish I could tell you that it was his fault, that he pursued me relentlessly until I had no choice but to give in. But that would be a lie, and I promised myself I would tell you the truth. The truth is that I pursued him just as much as he pursued me, maybe more. I knew what I was doing was wrong, knew that every text message, every secret meeting, every lie I told my sister was another brick in the wall that would eventually separate us forever. But I couldn't stop. That's not entirely true either. I didn't want to stop. For the first time in my life, I had something that Charlotte didn't. I had the attention of her boyfriend, the man she loved, the man she was planning to marry. And as sick as it sounds, that power felt intoxicating. Every time Daniel chose to spend time with me instead of her, every time he told me I was beautiful, every time he touched me in ways he should only have touched my sister, I felt like I was finally winning at something. I know how terrible that sounds. Trust me, I know. But I'm not here to make excuses or paint myself in a better light. I'm here to confess, and confession means telling the ugly truth even when it makes you look like a monster. The affair lasted for 8 months. 8 months of lies and secret hotel rooms and elaborate cover stories. 8 months of looking my sister in the eye and pretending everything was normal while I was sleeping with the love of her life. 8 months of telling myself that this wasn't really betrayal, that you can't help who you fall in love with, that Charlotte would eventually find someone better. All the lies we tell ourselves to justify the unjustifiable. But here's the thing about secrets in a small world. They never stay secret forever. Someone always sees something. Someone always talks. And in our case, that someone was my own mother. Mom had come to visit me unexpectedly one afternoon. She still had a key to my flat from when I was recovering from surgery a few years earlier, and she used it to let herself in, wanting to surprise me with homemade soup because I'd mentioned having a cold. What she found instead was Daniel's jacket hanging over my chair, and Daniel himself walking out of my bedroom wearing nothing but his trousers. I wasn't there at the time. I had run out to the pharmacy to get medicine, leaving Daniel in my flat because Charlotte thought he was at a work conference in London. When I came back 20 minutes later, Mum was sitting on my sofa, her face pale and her hands shaking, while Daniel stood by the door looking like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. "Rebecca," Mum said, her voice barely above a whisper, "tell me this isn't what it looks like. Tell me my daughter wouldn't do this to her own sister." I couldn't speak. All those months of lies, all those carefully constructed stories, and in one moment, it all came crashing down. Daniel grabbed his jacket and left without saying a word, leaving me alone with my mother and the weight of what I had done. "How long?" Mum asked. "Mum, I can explain." "How long, Rebecca?" I closed my eyes. 8 months. The sound she made then haunts me still. It wasn't a scream or a sob. It was something worse, a wounded animal noise that came from deep in her chest, the sound of a mother realizing that one of her children was capable of causing such profound harm to the other. "Your sister loves him," she said, standing up. "She loves him, and she's planning to spend her life with him, and you've been doing this behind her back for 8 months? It just happened." "Nothing just happens, Rebecca. You made a choice. Every single day, you made a choice to betray her." She was right. I knew she was right. But admitting it felt impossible. "Are you going to tell her?" I asked. Mum looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something in her eyes I had never seen before. Disappointment so deep, it bordered on disgust. "No," she said finally. "You are. You're going to tell your sister the truth, and you're going to do it today. Because if you don't, I will. And it will be so much worse coming from me." She left without another word, and I sat alone in my flat, surrounded by the evidence of my betrayal, knowing that my life was about to change forever. But here's the part I'm most ashamed of. The part that shows you exactly what kind of person I really was at that time. I didn't call Charlotte immediately. I didn't rush over to her house to confess and beg for forgiveness. Instead, I called Daniel. "My mother found out," I said when he answered. There was a long pause. "What do you mean, found out?" "She came to my flat. She saw you. She knows everything." Another pause. Longer this time. "What are we going to do?" That word, we. As if we were partners in this, as if what we had was something real and worth protecting. In that moment, I realized something I had been refusing to see for 8 months. Daniel wasn't in love with me. He had never been in love with me. I was a distraction, an ego boost, a thrill. And I had sacrificed my sister for someone who would throw me away the moment things got difficult. "I have to tell Charlotte," I said. "My mother gave me until the end of today." "Okay," Daniel said. "Okay, let me talk to her first. I can explain." "No, I need to be the one to tell her." "Rebecca, think about this. If you tell her, she'll never forgive you. But if I tell her, if I frame it the right way, maybe we can control the damage. Maybe I can make her understand that it was just a mistake, that it didn't mean anything." There it was. It didn't mean anything. 8 months of my life, 8 months of believing I was special, that what we had was real, and to him, it didn't mean anything. "Fine," I said, my voice hollow. "You tell her. But Daniel, don't you dare make me out to be the villain in this story." He agreed, and I spent the rest of the afternoon waiting by my phone, watching the minutes tick by, knowing that somewhere across town, My sister's heart was being shattered into a million pieces. Charlotte called me at 6 o'clock that evening. When I saw her name on my screen, my hand trembled so badly I almost dropped the phone. Hello? Is it true? Her voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that comes before a storm. Charlotte? Is it true, Rebecca? Did you sleep with Daniel? Did you have an affair with my boyfriend for 8 months while looking me in the eye every Sunday at family dinner? I couldn't lie anymore. The lies had become too heavy to carry. Yes, I whispered. It's true. The silence that followed was the longest of my life. I counted my heartbeats. 1, 2, 3, 10, 20. Still nothing but silence on the other end of the line. Charlotte, are you there? I'm here. Her voice had changed. The calm was gone, replaced by something I couldn't identify. Not anger exactly. Something colder than anger. I just needed to hear you say it. I needed to know that my own sister could actually do this to me. I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything, but I am. I'm so incredibly sorry. You're right, she said. It doesn't mean anything. Nothing you say means anything anymore because I know now that every word out of your mouth could be a lie. Every conversation we've ever had, every moment we've shared, all of it is tainted now. Because you were lying to me. For 8 months, you were lying to me. Please, Charlotte, let me come over. Let me explain. Explain what? Explain how you seduced my boyfriend? Explain how you met him in secret while I was at work, thinking about our future, planning our wedding? There's nothing to explain, Rebecca. You made your choice. You chose him over me. And now you have to live with that. Charlotte, please. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't come to my house. As far as I'm concerned, I don't have a sister anymore. The line went dead. I tried calling back immediately, but she didn't answer. I tried again and again. 23 missed calls that night, each one going straight to voicemail. Finally, I gave up and drove to her house, desperate to see her face, to make her understand that I hadn't meant for any of this to happen. When I got there, all the lights were off. I rang the doorbell, knocked, called her name. Nothing. Either she wasn't home or she was inside, listening to me plead and choosing to ignore me. I sat on her doorstep until 2 a.m, crying and begging through the door for a chance to explain. At some point, her neighbor came out and threatened to call the police if I didn't leave. So I left. I went home to my empty flat and lay awake until dawn, going over every decision I had made that had led me to this moment. The following weeks were the worst of my life. Charlotte blocked my number, blocked me on all social media, and sent a message through our mother that she wanted nothing to do with me. Daniel, predictably, wanted nothing to do with me either. Charlotte had ended their relationship immediately, and he had apparently moved to London to start fresh, leaving behind the wreckage of what we had done together. Mum barely spoke to me during this time. She was torn between her love for me and her devastation at what I had done to Charlotte. Dad was gone by then, thank God. At least he was spared knowing what his youngest daughter was capable of. I threw myself into work, trying to fill the hours with anything that would keep me from thinking about what I had lost. But it was everywhere. Every memory I had was connected to Charlotte in some way. The cafe where we used to meet for coffee, the park where we walked together on Sunday mornings, the song that played in my shop that reminded me of road trips we took as teenagers. Everything circled back to her. After 3 months of silence, I wrote Charlotte a letter. A real letter, handwritten on paper, because I thought it might feel more personal than an email or a text. I poured my heart into those pages. I explained how the affair had started, how I had been jealous of her my entire life, how that jealousy had poisoned me and made me capable of something I never thought I could do. I apologized for everything. I told her I would do anything to earn her forgiveness, that I would spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to her if she would just give me another chance. I sent the letter and waited. A week later, it came back to me, unopened. She had written "Return to Sender" on the envelope in her neat teacher's handwriting, and that small act of rejection felt more final than anything that had come before. I fell apart after that. I stopped going to work, stopped eating properly, stopped doing anything except lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of my life and trying to understand how I had become this person. The jealousy I had felt towards Charlotte had consumed me, and in trying to take something from her, I had lost everything that actually mattered. About 6 months after Charlotte discovered the truth, I received a message from an old school friend named Grace. She and Charlotte had been close once, and apparently they had reconnected recently. Grace's message was simple but devastating. "I thought you should know," she wrote. "Charlotte is engaged. She met someone new, a teacher at her school named Marcus. They're getting married in the spring. She seems happy. I know you two aren't speaking, but I thought you'd want to know." I read that message 50 times, trying to make sense of my own emotions. I was happy for her, genuinely happy that she had found someone who could give her the future she deserved. But I was also devastated, because this was yet another milestone in her life that I wouldn't be part of. Her wedding. The biggest day of her life. And I wouldn't be there. I wouldn't be her maid of honor, as we had always planned. I wouldn't help her choose her dress or calm her nerves on the morning of the ceremony. I had forfeited that privilege with my choices. I wrote back to Grace. "Thank you for telling me. I'm happy for her. She deserves all the happiness in the world," Grace responded a few hours later. "She does. But Rebecca, she's not the same since what happened. She tries to hide it, but I can see it. The trust is gone. Not just with you, but with everyone. She second guesses everything now. Checks Marcus's phone when he's not looking. Has nightmares about being betrayed again. What happened with you and Daniel changed her. I just thought you should know that too." That message broke something inside me that I didn't even know was still intact. All this time, I had been focused on my own pain, my own loss, my own guilt. I hadn't fully understood the extent of the damage I had caused to Charlotte. I hadn't just broken her heart. I had broken her ability to trust, her sense of security, her belief in the people she loved. I had changed her fundamental understanding of the world, and not for the better. I wanted to fix it. God, I wanted to fix it so badly. But how do you fix something that you've shattered so completely? How do you rebuild trust with someone who won't even acknowledge your existence? I decided to try therapy. It was something I had resisted for years, believing that I could handle my problems on my own. But clearly, I couldn't. Clearly, there was something broken inside me that needed professional help to understand. My therapist was named Dr. Amelia Hayes, and she was exactly what I needed. Patient, direct, unwilling to let me make excuses for myself. In our first session, she asked me why I had really pursued the affair with Daniel, not the surface reasons, not the "it just happened" nonsense. The real reason, the one I had been avoiding for months. I tried to deflect, tried to talk about loneliness, about feeling overlooked, about Daniel's charm and the thrill of secrecy, but Dr. Hayes saw through all of it. "Rebecca," she said, "I want you to close your eyes and think back to a moment in your childhood, a moment when you felt truly overshadowed by your sister. Can you do that?" I closed my eyes, and immediately a memory surfaced. I was 11 years old, and it was the night of Charlotte's school play. She had the lead role, and the entire family had gone to watch her perform. I remember sitting in the audience, watching her command the stage, watching my parents beam with pride, watching everyone around me whisper about how talented she was, and I remember thinking, with the clear, uncomplicated logic of a child, nobody will ever look at me the way they're looking at her. I told Dr. Hayes about this memory, and she nodded slowly. That feeling, she said, that sense of being invisible, of being less than, you've carried it with you your entire life, haven't you? I nodded, tears streaming down my face. And when Daniel paid attention to you, when he made you feel special and chosen, it was like finally getting something that had always been out of reach. It wasn't really about Daniel at all. It was about proving to yourself that you could have something Charlotte had, that you could win, just once. Yes, I whispered. That's exactly what it was. But here's the thing, Rebecca. It was never a competition. Charlotte wasn't trying to beat you. She was just living her life, loving you, being your sister. The competition existed only in your mind, and by treating it as a game to be won, you destroyed the most important relationship you had. Hearing it laid out so plainly was excruciating, but it was also clarifying. For the first time, I understood the root of my actions. I understood that my betrayal of Charlotte hadn't really been about love or desire or Daniel at all. It had been about decades of unresolved jealousy, festering beneath the surface, waiting for an opportunity to erupt. Understanding the why didn't excuse what I had done. Nothing could excuse it. But it did help me begin the long, painful process of changing, of becoming the kind of person who wouldn't make the same choices again. I spent 2 years in therapy. 2 years of unpacking my childhood, my insecurities, my distorted view of myself in relation to my sister. 2 years of learning to see Charlotte not as a rival, but as an individual who had her own struggles, her own insecurities, her own fears that I had never bothered to consider because I was too busy focusing on my own. During this time, I made no attempts to contact Charlotte. Dr. Hayes had advised me that reaching out before I had truly changed would only cause more harm. Charlotte needed space, needed to heal on her own terms, and I needed to respect that even if it meant never having the chance to apologize properly. But I thought about her every day. I followed her life from a distance, through mutual friends and occasional updates from Mum. She got married to Marcus in a beautiful ceremony in the countryside. She got promoted to assistant head teacher. She bought a house with a garden and got a dog named Rosie. She was building a life, a good life, and I was grateful for that, even as I grieved not being part of it. Mum eventually forgave me, or at least she reached a point where she could talk to me without that look of disappointment in her eyes. We rebuilt our relationship slowly, carefully, both of us aware that the family was permanently fractured and that nothing would ever be quite the same. She asks about you sometimes, Mum told me one day, about 3 years after everything fell apart. My heart leapt. She does? Not directly. She'll say something like, "How is everyone?" And I know she means you. I tell her you're doing well, that you've changed, that you're not the same person you were. Does she believe you? Mum sighed. I don't know, love. I think she wants to believe it, but the hurt is still there. It might always be there. I understood. Some wounds don't fully heal. They just become part of you, scar tissue that aches when the weather changes. The breakthrough came unexpectedly on the day of our mother's 70th birthday. Mum had been diagnosed with early-stage dementia a few months earlier, and we all knew that this might be one of her last lucid milestone celebrations. She had one request for her birthday, to have both her daughters in the same room, just for a few hours. Charlotte agreed reluctantly for Mum's sake, and I agreed, terrified but hopeful, knowing this might be my only chance to see my sister again. The party was held at Mum's house, a small gathering of close family and old friends. I arrived early to help set up, my hands trembling as I arranged flowers and placed name cards on the tables. Every time the door opened, I looked up, half expecting to see Charlotte, half hoping she wouldn't come after all, because at least then I could avoid the confrontation I had been dreading for 4 years. But she did come. At precisely 3 o'clock, the front door opened, and there she was. She looked different. Older, obviously, but there was something else too. A guardedness in her posture, a wariness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. I had put that there. I had made my bright, confident sister doubt herself and the world around her. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. The entire room seemed to hold its breath, everyone aware of the history between us, everyone waiting to see what would happen. "Hello, Rebecca," Charlotte said finally. Her voice was neutral, carefully controlled. "Hello, Charlotte. You look beautiful." She nodded, not accepting the compliment, but not rejecting it either. "I'm here for Mum, not for you." "I know, I understand." She moved past me to greet Mum, and I watched as her face transformed from guarded wariness to genuine warmth. She hugged our mother tightly, whispered something in her ear that made Mum laugh, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of the Charlotte I remembered. The sister I had loved so fiercely and betrayed so completely. The party continued, and Charlotte and I orbited each other carefully, never quite meeting, never quite avoiding. She talked to cousins and old friends. I helped serve food and kept the drinks flowing. We were both trying so hard to act normal for Mum's sake, but the tension was palpable. It wasn't until late in the evening that we finally had a moment alone. I had stepped out into the garden for some air, and a few minutes later, I heard the door open behind me. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. "Mum seems happy," Charlotte said, coming to stand beside me. Not close, but not far away either, a careful distance. "She does. I think having both of us here meant a lot to her." It probably did. We stood in silence for a while, looking at the stars. It was a clear night, the kind of night that feels full of possibility, even when everything seems hopeless. "I've been to therapy," I said quietly. "For the last 2 years, I've been trying to understand why I did what I did, trying to become someone better." Charlotte didn't respond immediately. When she did, her voice was thoughtful. "And did you? Understand, I mean?" "I think so. It was never about Daniel. It was about us, about me feeling like I could never measure up to you, about decades of jealousy that I never dealt with." "You were jealous of me?" I turned to look at her, surprised by the genuine confusion in her voice. "Of course I was. You were everything I wasn't. Smart, successful, confident. Everyone loved you, everyone admired you, and I was just Charlotte's little sister, the one who didn't quite live up." Charlotte shook her head slowly. "I never saw it that way. I never thought of you as less than me. I thought of you as my sister, my best friend, the person I loved most in the world." Her words hit me like a physical blow. I had spent my entire life believing I was in competition with Charlotte, and she had never been competing at all. She had just been loving me the way sisters are supposed to. "I know that now," I said, my voice breaking. "I know I wasted so many years being jealous of things that didn't matter, and I destroyed the one thing that actually did. You were my best friend too, Charlotte, and I threw that away for nothing, for a man who didn't even love me, for a feeling of victory that turned to ash in my mouth the moment I won." Charlotte was quiet for a long time. I could see her processing, weighing, deciding. Every second felt like an hour. "Do you know what the worst part was?" she said finally. "It wasn't Daniel. I got over Daniel eventually. Marcus is 10 times the man Daniel ever was, and I'm genuinely grateful that things worked out the way they did. No, the worst part was you, knowing that my own sister could do that to me. It made me question everything, every memory, every conversation, every moment we shared. I kept thinking, was she secretly hating me the whole time? Was our entire relationship a lie?" "It wasn't," I said desperately. "I loved you. I always loved you. The jealousy was there too, but it didn't cancel out the love. I let the wrong feeling win. I made a terrible choice, and I will regret it for the rest of my life." "I know you will," Charlotte said softly. I can see it in your face. You've aged 10 years in the last 4. You look like someone who's been carrying a weight too heavy for one person. I have been. The guilt doesn't go away. It just becomes part of you. Yes, I know something about that. I looked at her, confused. What do you have to feel guilty about? Charlotte sighed, and for the first time, I saw something other than hurt in her eyes. Something that looked almost like empathy. I've thought about this a lot over the years, she said, about my role in what happened, and I've realized that I wasn't completely innocent either. Charlotte, you didn't do anything wrong. Let me finish. I knew you struggled. I knew you felt overshadowed, and instead of helping you with that, instead of making space for you to shine, I just kept going, kept achieving, kept being the golden child without ever stopping to think about how that affected you. I'm not saying that excuses what you did, it doesn't, but I've had to accept that family dynamics are complicated, and sometimes the people we hurt are also the people we've hurt. I didn't know what to say. This was more than I had ever hoped for. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. A willingness to see beyond the simple narrative of villain and victim. I'm so sorry, I said, the words feeling completely inadequate. I'm sorry for everything. For the affair, for the lies, for the damage I caused, for the years of jealousy that you never knew about, for making you doubt yourself and the people around you, for taking away your ability to trust. I'm sorry for all of it, Charlotte nodded slowly. I believe you. I can see you've changed. I can see the work you've put in. Does that mean, is there any chance we could try again? I'm not asking for things to go back to how they were. I know that's impossible. But maybe we could start fresh, build something new. She was quiet for a long moment, and I felt my heart hanging in the balance. Everything depended on what she said next. My future, my sense of peace, my hope for redemption. I don't know, she said finally. I want to say yes, but I'm scared. I'm scared that if I let you back in, you'll hurt me again. I'm scared that I'll never fully trust you, and that distrust will poison whatever we try to build. I'm scared that forgiving you will feel like betraying myself. I understand, I said, even though every word felt like a knife. I understand, and I respect whatever you decide. I just want you to know that I'm here. Whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'm here. And I will spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of a second chance, even if that chance never comes. Charlotte looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in her eyes. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the first step towards it. Let's start small, she said. Mom's birthday, Christmas, family events. We'll be in the same room and we'll be civil and we'll see how it goes. It wasn't much, but it was more than I deserved, and I knew it. Thank you, I said, tears streaming down my face. Thank you for even considering it. She nodded once, then turned and walked back inside, leaving me alone in the garden with my tears and my gratitude and my fragile, precious hope. The months that followed were tentative, awkward, full of false starts and uncomfortable silences. Christmas was particularly difficult. We sat across from each other at Mum's table, trying to make conversation while carefully avoiding any topic that might lead to the past. Marcus was there, kind and patient, clearly unsure how to navigate the complicated dynamics of his wife's fractured family. But we tried. We both tried. And slowly, imperceptibly, something began to shift. It started with small gestures. A text from Charlotte asking if I'd seen a particular movie she thought I'd like. An email I sent her with an article about a teaching method I'd read about. Little bridges, carefully constructed, testing the weight of what they could carry. Then came larger steps. A coffee date, just the two of us, at a neutral cafe in a different town where we wouldn't run into anyone we knew. We talked about safe topics, work, weather, Mum's health. But by the end, we had ventured into more personal territory. My therapy journey, her difficulties trusting Marcus, the slow, painful process of rebuilding ourselves. I still have bad days, Charlotte admitted. Days when the anger comes back and I want to scream at you for what you did. I understand. You're allowed to feel that way. But they're getting fewer. The bad days. And the good days, the days when I can think about you without pain, they're getting more. That was all I could ask for. Progress. Not perfection. Movement forward, however slow. About a year after Mum's birthday party, Charlotte invited me to her house for the first time. It was a big step, inviting me into her space, the life she had built without me. I drove there with a pit in my stomach, half expecting her to change her mind at any moment. But she didn't. She welcomed me at the door with a cautious smile, introduced me properly to Marcus, and gave me a tour of the house they had made together. Rosie the dog took an instant liking to me, which seemed to amuse Charlotte. She's usually suspicious of strangers, she said, watching Rosie lick my hand. Maybe she senses that I'm not a stranger, not really. Charlotte considered this, then nodded. Maybe she does. We had dinner together that night. Charlotte, Marcus, and me sitting around their kitchen table, eating pasta and drinking wine and talking like normal people. It wasn't perfect. There were still awkward pauses, moments where the weight of history pressed down on us. But there were also moments of genuine connection, flashes of the easy intimacy we had once shared. At the end of the evening, as I was getting ready to leave, Charlotte pulled me aside. "I'm glad you came," she said. "I wasn't sure I would be, but I am." "So am I. Thank you for inviting me." She hesitated, then pulled me into a hug. It was brief, tentative, not quite the bone-crushing embraces we used to share, but it was real, and it was more than I had ever dared to hope for. "I'm not ready to say I forgive you," she said as she pulled back. "I don't know if I'll ever be completely ready, but I'm willing to keep trying. I'm willing to see where this goes." "That's all I can ask for," I said, meaning it with every fiber of my being. "Thank you, Charlotte, for giving me a chance I don't deserve." She smiled, and for just a second, I saw my sister. My real sister. The one I had loved since before I could remember. The one I had hurt so badly. The one who was somehow, impossibly, willing to let me back into her life. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was something more fragile and more precious than either of those things. It was hope. The road forward hasn't been easy. Even now, years later, there are moments when the past rises up between us, when the hurt in Charlotte's eyes makes me want to disappear. There are things we don't talk about, memories we carefully avoid, wounds that have scarred over but never fully healed. But we're in each other's lives again. We have coffee once a month. We text about silly things that remind us of each other. I was there when Mum's dementia progressed to the point where she needed full-time care, and Charlotte and I made those difficult decisions together, as sisters should. I've never stopped feeling guilty for what I did. I don't think I ever will. The guilt is part of me now, as much as the jealousy used to be. But I've learned to carry it differently. Not as a burden that crushes me, but as a reminder of who I was and who I never want to be again. Charlotte got pregnant last year. When she told me the news, I cried. Not from jealousy this time, but from pure, uncomplicated joy. She was going to be a mother. My sister was going to have a baby, and this time, I got to be part of it. "We want you to be the godmother," she said, and I think my heart actually stopped. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Marcus agrees. We've talked about it, and we want you." "But after everything, Charlotte interrupted. "You're still my sister, and you've done the work. You've shown me that you've changed. I trust you with this, Rebecca. I trust you with my child. Those words, I trust you. Words I never thought I'd hear from her again. Words that felt like absolution, even though I know I'll never fully deserve them. I'm going to be a godmother. I'm going to hold my sister's baby and watch them grow up and be part of their life in a way I almost forfeited forever. And every single day, I'm going to remember how close I came to losing all of this. How my jealousy and my choices nearly cost me the most important relationship I've ever had. I still don't have all the answers. I still don't fully understand how Charlotte found it in herself to give me another chance when I had given her every reason not to. But I know this. Forgiveness is a choice that keeps getting made. It's not a single moment, not a one-time decision. It's something you have to choose, over and over, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Charlotte chose to keep forgiving me. Not because I earned it, but because holding on to the anger was hurting her more than letting it go. She chose herself, her peace, her future, and in doing so, she saved both of us. I betrayed my sister. I almost lost her forever, but through grace I didn't deserve and work I had to do, I got part of her back. Not all of her. The trust between us is different now, more fragile, more carefully maintained. But it's real. And it's ours. If you're listening to this and you've done something terrible to someone you love, I want you to know that redemption is possible. It's not guaranteed. It's not owed to you. But it's possible. If you're willing to look honestly at yourself, if you're willing to do the hard work of changing, if you're willing to wait and hope and accept that the person you hurt might never forgive you, there's a chance. A small, precious, fragile chance that you might find your way back to each other. And if you're listening to this and you've been hurt by someone you love, I want you to know that your pain is valid. You don't owe anyone forgiveness. You don't have to let them back in, no matter how much they've changed. Your healing is yours, and it has to happen on your own terms. But I also want you to know that if you choose to forgive, if you choose to give someone a second chance, you're not betraying yourself. You're not being weak. You're being incredibly, impossibly brave. Because forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to move forward anyway. It means refusing to let the worst thing someone did be the only thing that defines them. Charlotte did that for me. She saw the worst of me, and she chose to see if there was something else, too. Something worth saving. And she found it. I don't know if I would have had that kind of strength in her position. I don't know if I would have been capable of such profound generosity, but I know I'm grateful for it. Every day, I'm grateful, and every day, I try to be worthy of it. My name is Rebecca. I betrayed my sister, and through a miracle I still don't fully understand, I got her back. That's my confession. That's my truth. And I will carry both with me for the rest of my life. If you're out there, Charlotte, if you ever listen to this story, I want you to know, thank you. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for giving me a chance. Thank you for being my sister, even when I gave you every reason not to be. I love you. I always have, and I always will. The end. I've learned something else in the years since my confession first took shape in my mind. I've learned that karma isn't always about punishment. Sometimes karma is about education. It's about putting you in situations where you're forced to confront yourself, where running away is no longer an option. When Mum's health started to decline more rapidly last year, Charlotte and I found ourselves spending more time together than we had in decades. Long days at the care facility, coordinating with doctors, making impossible decisions about a woman we both loved more than words could express. And in those moments, in the waiting rooms and the hospital corridors and the quiet evenings when we'd collapse on Charlotte's sofa with takeaway food and exhaustion, I saw something I hadn't expected. I saw how similar we were. Not in the ways I had always imagined, not in terms of achievements or success, or the things that had fueled my jealousy for so long, but in the ways that actually mattered. The way we both went quiet when we were overwhelmed. The way we both cried in private and put on brave faces in public. The way we both found comfort in small rituals, a certain type of tea, a particular song, the same brand of biscuits Mum used to buy for us when we were children. We were sisters, truly, deeply sisters, and it had taken breaking everything apart to finally see what we had. One evening, about a month before Mum passed, Charlotte and I were sitting with her in her room at the care home. She was having one of her confused days, not quite sure where she was or who we were. She kept calling me Charlotte and Charlotte by some name neither of us recognized. "Who's Elizabeth?" Charlotte asked her gently. Mum smiled, a dreamy, distant smile. "My sister. We used to play together in the garden. She had the prettiest laugh." Charlotte and I exchanged glances. Mum was an only child. There had never been a sister named Elizabeth. But in her fragmented mind, she had created one, or remembered one, or dreamed one into existence. "Tell me about her," I said, playing along. "Oh, she was wonderful, always getting into trouble, that one. But I loved her. I loved her so much. We had a fight once, a terrible fight, and I thought she'd never speak to me again. But she did. She came back. Sisters always come back." I felt Charlotte's hand find mine, squeezing tightly. "Yes, Mum," Charlotte said, her voice thick with emotion. "Sisters always come back." Mum passed peacefully in her sleep 2 weeks later. Charlotte and I were both there, holding her hands, telling her stories about Elizabeth and gardens and childhood games. I don't know if she could hear us, but I like to think she could. I like to think she knew in those final moments that her daughters were together again, that whatever damage had been done, we had found our way back to each other. The funeral was beautiful. Charlotte gave the eulogy, because she was always the one with words. But she asked me to choose the music, because she remembered how Mum and I used to dance around the kitchen when I was young. It was a small thing, but it felt significant. A recognition that we both had roles to play, that we were both essential parts of Mum's story. After the service, after the guests had gone and the sandwiches had been cleared away and the flowers had started to wilt, Charlotte and I sat together in Mum's empty house, surrounded by a lifetime of memories. "Do you remember the summer we built that fort in the garden?" Charlotte asked suddenly. I smiled. "The one that fell down after 2 days?" "Dad was so angry. All that wood wasted." "But Mum defended us, said we were being creative." She always defended us, both of us, even when we didn't deserve it. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, the kind of silence that used to feel natural between us and was starting to feel natural again. "I'm glad you're here," Charlotte said finally. "I couldn't have done this without you." "You would have managed. You always manage. Maybe, but I didn't want to manage. I wanted my sister." Those words, "I wanted my sister." Simple words, but they carried the weight of everything we had been through. All the pain, all the healing, all the small, careful steps we had taken to get here. "I wanted my sister too," I said. "I wanted her for so long, and I was so convinced I didn't deserve her." "You didn't," Charlotte said, but there was no malice in her voice, just honesty. "But that didn't stop me from wanting you back. That's the strange thing about family. We can be so angry at each other, so hurt by each other, and still miss each other terribly." "I missed you every single day, even when I didn't know how to say it." "I know. I missed you too." We hugged then properly, the way we used to before everything fell apart. Not cautious or careful, but desperate and real. And in that embrace, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Wholeness, like a part of me that had been missing was finally back in place. Charlotte's daughter was born 3 months later. They named her Eleanor, after Marcus's grandmother, but everyone calls her Ellie. She has Charlotte's eyes and Marcus's stubborn chin, and she is, without question, the most beautiful baby I have ever seen. I was there when she was born, waiting in the hospital, pacing the corridors, drinking terrible coffee, and jumping at every sound. When Charlotte finally emerged, exhausted but radiant, she put Ellie in my arms without hesitation. "Say hello to your godmother," she said. Ellie looked up at me with those big, dark eyes, and something cracked open in my chest. A wave of love so intense it was almost painful. This tiny person, this perfect, innocent creature, was trusting me. Her mother was trusting me with her. "Hello, Ellie," I whispered. "I'm your Aunt Rebecca, and I'm going to spend my whole life making sure you know how much you're loved." Charlotte smiled, and for a moment, we weren't two women with a complicated history. We were just sisters, sharing a moment of pure joy. I babysit Ellie regularly now. Every Friday afternoon, I pick her up from nursery and take her back to my flat, where we play with blocks and watch cartoons and eat far more biscuits than Charlotte would probably approve of. She's 2 years old, full of energy and opinions, and spending time with her is the highlight of my week. Sometimes, when I'm watching her play, I think about the future. About the day she'll be old enough to understand that her mom and her aunt had years where they didn't speak. About the questions she might ask, the stories we'll have to tell her. I've thought a lot about what I'll say, how I'll explain the choices I made, the damage I caused, the long road back to each other. I don't have all the answers yet, but I know I'll be honest. I'll tell her that people make mistakes, sometimes terrible ones, that family can break and be rebuilt, that forgiveness is hard but possible, and love is stubborn enough to survive almost anything. I'll tell her about her grandmother, who loved both her daughters fiercely and never stopped believing we would find our way back to each other. I'll tell her about the imaginary sister named Elizabeth, and how even in the fog of dementia, Mum knew that sisters always come back. And I'll tell her about her mother, the strongest, bravest, most generous person I've ever known. The woman who had every right to hate me forever and chose instead to love me again. Charlotte still has her moments of doubt. She told me recently that sometimes, late at night, the old fears creep back. The worry that I'll betray her again, the anxiety that the other shoe will drop, that the peace we've built is too fragile to last. "What do you do when that happens?" I asked her. "I remember how far we've come," she said. "I look at Ellie and think about the life we're building together, and I choose to trust, not blindly, not naively, but deliberately. I choose to believe that you're the person you've shown yourself to be, not the person you were." I'm trying so hard to be worthy of that trust. I know you are, and that's why I can keep choosing it. Choosing. That word again. Forgiveness as an active process, not a passive state. Something you have to commit to over and over every single day. I'm still learning, still growing, still working on the parts of myself that led me to betray the person I loved most. The jealousy that used to consume me hasn't disappeared entirely. Sometimes I catch glimpses of it, old patterns of thought that try to reassert themselves. But I recognize them now. I can name them, examine them, choose not to act on them. That's the thing about change. It's not about becoming a completely different person. It's about becoming more aware of who you already are and making conscious decisions about which parts of yourself you want to nurture. I've nurtured my love for Charlotte. I've nurtured my capacity for honesty and humility. I've nurtured the understanding that competition with the people we love is a losing game, because their success doesn't diminish our own. And slowly, those nurtured parts have grown strong enough to crowd out the jealousy. Not eliminate it entirely, but keep it in check. Keep it from controlling me the way it once did. Looking back, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if Mum hadn't walked into my flat that day. If she hadn't discovered the affair when she did. Would I have continued indefinitely? Would Daniel and I have become something more serious? Would I have eventually destroyed Charlotte's relationship with her own choices rather than having it destroyed by the revelation of mine? I don't know. I'll never know. But I suspect the answer is no. I suspect the guilt would have eventually become unbearable. I suspect some part of me was looking for a way out, a way to end the charade, and Mum's discovery provided it. Either way, it doesn't matter now. What matters is what happened after. The pain and the healing, the fracture and the slow mending, the years of work that led us to where we are today. I used to think my story was a tragedy, a cautionary tale about jealousy and betrayal and the destruction of something precious. And maybe it is, in part, but I've come to see it differently now. My story is a love story, not the romantic kind, but something deeper. A story about the love between sisters, how it can be tested and broken and rebuilt. A story about the resilience of family bonds, how they can survive things that seem survivable. A story about the human capacity for change, for growth, for becoming someone better than we were. I'm not proud of who I was. I'll never be proud of what I did, but I am proud of who I'm becoming, and I'm grateful every single day for the sister who gave me a chance to become her. Charlotte and I had dinner last week, just the two of us, at a little Italian restaurant that's become our regular spot. We talked about Ellie's latest milestones, about Charlotte's work, about the dating life I'm tentatively dipping my toes back into. We laughed at stories and rolled our eyes at memories, and for a couple of hours, we were just two sisters enjoying each other's company. At the end of the meal, as we were waiting for the bill, Charlotte reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm glad we found our way back," she said. "I wasn't sure we ever would, but I'm glad we did." "Me too," I said. "More than you'll ever know." "I do know, actually. I can see it. Every time you look at me, every time you look at Ellie, I can see how much this means to you. It means everything. You mean everything." She smiled, and it was the real Charlotte smile, the one I remembered from before, the one I had thought I'd never see directed at me again. "I love you, Rebecca, despite everything, maybe even because of everything, in a strange way. We've been tested, and we survived. Not many sisters can say that." "I love you too," I said, tears pricking at my eyes. "I love you, and I'm sorry, and I will never stop being grateful that you let me back in." "Just don't make me regret it," she said, but she was still smiling. "I won't. I promise." And I meant it. More than I've ever meant anything in my life. I betrayed my sister. I lost her. And then, through a combination of work and hope and grace, I found her again. That's my story. That's my confession. And if there's one thing I want you to take from it, it's this. Redemption is possible. It's not guaranteed. It's not easy. But it's possible. If you've hurt someone you love, you can make it right. Not by expecting forgiveness, not by demanding a second chance, but by doing the work. By becoming the kind of person who wouldn't make the same choices again. By proving, through actions, not words, that you've changed. And if you've been hurt by someone you love, know that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. Not the person who hurt you. You don't owe them anything. But holding on to anger is exhausting, and sometimes letting go is the bravest thing you can do. I'm still learning these lessons. I'll be learning them for the rest of my life. But I'm learning them with Charlotte by my side, and that makes all the difference. My name is Rebecca. I'm a sister, a godmother, a work in progress. I made terrible choices, and I'm living with the consequences. But I'm also living with hope, with love, with the knowledge that even the worst mistakes don't have to define us forever. Thank you for listening to my confession. Thank you for letting me tell this story. And wherever you are, whatever you're going through, I hope you know that it's never too late. Never too late to change. Never too late to try. Never too late to find your way back home.